Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering creativity. I'm Erin Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Erin Harkey, who serves as CEO of Americans for the Arts. Erin, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, so I am so excited, obviously, to be able to talk with you, Americans for the Arts, one of our wonderful creative partners, but obviously, standing at the forefront of advocacy and leadership in the arts nationally for what we do, and I think even internationally. And obviously, you are been coming into this role from leadership roles, public service, relating to the arts, Chicago, other cities as well. So I thought I would just start out first and foremost. How do you feel? And what is that feeling like? We have so many leaders who watch the show, but coming into a role like this at a time like this. And so I'm just curious, how do you feel and how do you feel about, what's coming down the road?
Well, I think, first and foremost, I'm really honored to be in the position that I am in. And I, am grateful that I have a career that means something to me and also helps people at the same time. So it feels, good to be in a position to help folks. In terms of, what's happening in the world and what's happening, I think specifically with the arts, I'm worried, I'm concerned. But I'm also energized, I think, because even in the most dire circumstances, right, there is opportunity to think about how to do things better, right? How to come together and how to strategize. So I'm feel strangely sort of a lot of optimism because I know that we can mobilize and make some good things happen too in this moment.
So obviously, so much of the work of Americans for the Arts relates to advocacy, and during times of challenge like this, I think so many of us in the arts are, if we hear from people or people are like, "There's this wrong in our society, that wrong." Public support for the arts, we just don't need it. They're not that important, right? Is there any kind of key things? I know there's a litany of, very specific, kind of, if you will, advocacy points, but kind of on a macro level, are
Yeah.
there any kind of key things that you would want to say to our audience? Make sure you share this. This is one of those key things that you should always be sharing when being challenged about the importance of the arts and or public support for the arts.
Yeah. Well, here's what I was been thinking about this a lot because there is a lot going on, right? And there's a lot to focus on and a lot to be concerned about. And how do we make, the arts part of that sort of narrative, right? When there is so much going on. And I don't think the arts are any more important, but they're not any less important, right, than any of those things too. We talk a lot about the sort of economic statistics, and it's challenging in one way because that's not why any of us are doing the work. But it's important, I think, to show the scale of what we're talking about. So the arts are a 1.2, I think 1.2 or 1.4 trillion dollar industry, right? Contributes 4% to the GDP. So this is a significant this is a significant thing, right? And if that is not healthy, right, then there are consequences. There are costs to that, which are both economic, social, and human costs to not having a thriving sort of art and cultural ecosystem in this country. So I think, we need to sort of continue to remind people that this isn't, just a nice to have, right? The arts are absolutely sort of essential. I think one of the things too that I've been sort of thinking about is that in some ways it's so intrinsic to the thing that to the stuff that we do, to our day-to-day lives, that it's hard to make that sort of differentiation, right? Like I listened to music when I worked out this morning, right? I put on earrings that this artisan, made, that I picked up at the farmer's market, right? We're taking our kids to, violin lesson or piano lesson or dance class, right? Or we're going to the movies with our friends or to a play. Like it is so much a part of how we function and how we relate to each other as sort of human beings, that it's sometimes difficult to make that distinction that you are engaging in an art activity, right? But if you sort of start to, really think about it, then the idea of it not being in your life, the amount of times that you are engaging on a daily basis with the work of an artist, right? You really start to think about it. Then the thought of it not being there is really unimaginable, right? So it's just sort of like, how do we find those sort of personalized connections? There's also all of these like awesome statistics that are like, 76% of Americans believe that the arts are essential, right, to quality of life, right? In a country of its size, 76% might as well be 100, right? That is a really powerful statement. We all agree, right, that this is really, really important. So I think that the argument really needs to try to get to that sort of personalized connection, because we all have one.
Yeah,
We do.
absolutely.
So, those are the arguments that I think are most effective.
And for those, many in our audience are, doing that day-to-day work in dance companies, theater, orchestra, other visual art, whatever it might be, and are seeing what's happening on a national scale, and are seeing maybe what has happened to their particular organization or relating to funding or these types of things. And they're saying, so separate from my own job that I'm doing day to day, what can I do? What do you say to just all of the people out there in the arts ecosystem who feel like, what can I do? There are these national policies happening and things that, right, that you might be doing at your level, looking at that and looking at what the government is doing. Is there anything you can share about what everyone, if you will, in the ecosystem can do to participate, to advocate, and to hopefully stem what some view as a tide against their life's work?
Yeah. Well, I think the arts, this is something that we're sort of used to. This is a sort of next level, but we are, sort of constantly in a place of sort of defending the work that we do. And I, like all of us, am, hoping for the day when that is no longer sort of needed, right? But I think our individual voice is powerful and our collective voice is extremely powerful too. And I think right now, what I would encourage people to do is to, number one, identify your local advocacy organization, either in your city or your state level advocacy organization, and connect with them. I think the, local organizing around, grassroots organizing around these particular issues is really, really important. And that sort of collectively sort of national voice then sort of echoes up to the federal level. So connecting locally is a really important thing to do. At AFTA, we've also developed a number of sort of toolkits that will help you effectively communicate with your legislators. We need to connect with Congress directly. And those personalized sort of expressions, picking up the phone calls. I know that's like, kind of an old school thing, but picking up the phone, calling your congressional offices, sending a personalized letter. We also have an opportunity to send form letters through our website, but really ramping up that outreach is really, really important. And, if you're an organization that has, experienced, some sort of cancellation of your grant, really knowing what your rights are is really, really important. So making sure that you don't navigate this alone and that you, reach out for support to understand, what uh, what pathways you have, I think is really, really important. And it's also really important to share your story, right? To tell people what has been lost with the cancellation of your grant, loss of program, how students are impacted, how your community is impacted, how artists are impacted by the loss of this grant, how your organization is impacted. It's important to start to really amplify and tell those stories.
I love that, especially telling the stories because it takes it beyond the numbers are there to be like, okay, look at this volume of impact, but each individual story in some ways feels like it's so powerful. And someone hears that story and realize, oh, wow, it's that times 1,000, it's that
Yes.
times 10,000.
Yeah. And
So,
it really, when you start to look at the sort of cancellations across all of the federal agencies, and now that the, National Endowment for the Arts just happened on Friday, but IMLS, sorry, I'm speaking in government acronyms, but IMLS, NEH, NEA, we started to sort of map impact, I mean, every part of the country is affected by this. And I think the other, sort of misconception about, funding for the arts is that it's going to, these extremely large, well-resourced organizations. But really, public funds are most effective at reaching, the hard to reach areas, the parts of the country that philanthropy is not currently investing. So what's at stake here is really, the small organization, right? That is, run by two full-time staff and a number of volunteers to whom a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts is a significant portion of their budget. And there aren't, numerous other avenues to sort of make up the funding that was lost, right? So I think it's important, right, that we, really push back against sort of incorrect narratives about where public funding for the arts goes, because it really is, in those communities. We're talking about rural communities, support for veterans programs, support for youth education programs. Like this is the heart of what public funding helps to support, and it's important.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I think some what you shared is also empowering. So I hope everyone in our audience does their part and participates as we face these challenges. So unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but
That was quick.
I know. There's always so. I wish we had so much more time. But I always like to ask of all of my guests this work obviously so fulfilling and to have this level of impact that you have and to really move the arts forward and how it's positioned in our society, but there must be tough days, and just wondering as an arts leader, are there any mechanisms or best practices that you utilize when it seems like a challenge is not able to be overcome or is insurmountable? Any things that you do that help you through those toughest of times?
I try to lean into the challenge instead of fighting it. Again, like I said, there's always opportunity within even the sort of most dire circumstance. And so, I think as hard as this is also a moment to sort of lean in, right? And so that's how I try to sort of approach it is, looking for opportunities to be smart and strategic and collaborative, because I think, again, together we're stronger. There are a lot of smart people, in this country that are dedicated to this work, and together we can figure it out.
Erin Harkey, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for
Thank
everything that you do, and thank you for
you.
being on the show.
Thanks.